Could you stand to be a little more assertive? If so, you're certainly in good company. As an executive coach, that's something that comes up a lot with a variety of clients that I work with. But in this video, you're going to learn some practical strategies that will help you to be more assertive in the workplace. So stay tuned. Okay, so before we get into the meat of this, let me give you a little background about myself. My name is Dr. Patricia Thompson. I am a corporate psychologist executive coach and founder of Silver Lining Psychology. You can find me at silverliningpsychology.com and go there to find out ways that you can work with me and also to see the variety of online courses I have on everything from leadership to resilience, mindfulness, emotional intelligence, accountability, and a lot of other topics. Okay, so let's get into this topic of assertiveness. And this is one that I can relate to actually on a personal level because historically I have had a hard time being assertive. And it used to feel like to me that anytime that I said no, I would worry about hurting the other person's feelings or causing some sort of conflict. And so I found myself getting into a lot of people-pleasing type behavior. And it had a negative outcome for myself in that I wasn't getting my needs met, in other people because they weren't being aware of my needs, and in the business environment, I wasn't assertive enough about being in a position to get my voice heard. And so a lot of times my contributions and ideas could get overlooked. And I've seen the same sort of thing happen with clients where they might have a lot of great ideas, but they never bring them up. Or they might let other people take advantage of them or run roughshod over them because they don't say no or they don't push back accordingly. Or they might have direct reports who are underperforming and they're not assertive enough to do anything about it. And so they continue to have lower than, expected results because they don't want to have the conversation, which would require some assertiveness. So like I said, I've been there, I get it, I've seen it with a lot of people. But I've also seen the flip side of being able to make some positive changes and really getting to be in a position in which you feel more empowered and in which you can have your voice heard and your needs met. So let's get into some of the specific ways that you can work on being more assertive. Okay, so my first tip might sound obvious, but I think I need to say it. And it's that you need to give yourself permission to be assertive. So a lot of people have been raised with the idea that to be nice, you should just go along with what other people say. And as a result, they might feel like others' needs are more important than their own. But here's the thing. You are just as worthy of having your needs met as anyone else. And so you need to give yourself a pep talk and remind yourself of that. No, I deserve to have my needs met. I am worthy. I can be nice and I can be assertive at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. And once you give yourself that permission and empower yourself to be assertive, that'll kind of give you, I think, the motivation you need to start to change some of your behaviors so that you can behave in a more assertive way. Okay, the second thing that I want to call out is to remind you that there is a big difference between being assertive and being aggressive. And so a lot of times when I'm working with clients who need to work on being more assertive, or maybe they've gotten that feedback from their boss, they can be reluctant to want to make any changes because they are concerned that they'll become overbearing and aggressive and people will see them as rude. But if we think of, not speaking up at all here, and we think of aggressiveness as over here, there's a long, long way to go from one to the other. And so if you start dialing up your behavior a little bit, you might get to the middle, which is like appropriately assertive, as opposed to going over where you want to go into aggression. So you just need to remember that there's a long way between the two, so that you'll remind yourself that no, you can still dial up and be more assertive and speak up, and that's not necessarily going to be perceived as aggressive. And in fact, I would argue that if you're someone who is pretty unassertive, you probably have a long way to go before you be perceived as aggressive. And so even though it might feel like you're being aggressive relative to what you might be used to doing, generally there's a pretty long path to go before you would venture into overbearing, rude, and aggressive territory. My next tip is to develop a constructive attitude about conflict. So a lot of times people will hear the word conflict and they'll have images of, I don't know, like boxing matches or two deer running into each other headlong, and it seems like a really almost violent sort of engagement or endeavor. But the fact of the matter is that conflict or disagreement is necessary to have good outcomes. When people have diverse opinions, that's how you get to be able to kind of really work through an issue and decide, okay, no, this is the best solution to the problem. And so if you think of anybody disagreeing with you as being conflict or threatening, then immediately if they push back, you might tend to shy away. But instead, if you look at it as part of the process that helps us to come up with a better solution, then you might be more prone to kind of continue to make your point while also listening to the other person. But you won't be, kind of shying away the minute that you get any sort of pushback. So remember, conflict or difference of opinion isn't necessarily a bad thing. And in fact, it can be really, really constructive for deepening relationships actually, and also for coming up with better solutions and better outcomes in the workplace. Something else that can be really helpful if you're anticipating that you might have a difficult conversation is to prepare yourself, right? You don't want to go in unarmed. If you're thinking that the other person might push back, you might want to practice ahead of time to think, what would I do in that situation, or how might I respond? Maybe you might want to run it past a coach like myself or a confidant and do a little bit of role playing so that you can get practice in dealing with different sorts of disagreements and kind of holding your ground appropriately. Something else that is really important to do is to learn to settle your body in those instances. So do some deep breathing, or again, remind yourself that conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing and it can help you to come out with a better solution. You can also read to get some more, talent in terms of dealing with conflict. A classic book is called Crucial Conversations. I'll put a link to it below this video. And in there, they actually talk about a technique called contrasting. And contrasting is basically making two kind of opposing statements if someone seems to be getting upset when you're having a disagreement. And so, for example, if you notice someone getting upset, you might say, I didn't mean to do X, what I meant to do is Y. I didn't intend, or I didn't mean to upset you with this. What I'm intending is for us to come up with a good solution that is going to be able to allow both of us to get our needs met. And so you're just kind of reframing the conversation and putting the person back on task. And that can be a really helpful thing to do when you're in a disagreement. The other thing that you can do is if you're dealing with someone who's really unreasonable and you feel like there's no way that you're going to win the battle, is you could first of all assess, okay, is this a battle that I really want to go forward with? Like, is it worth it? So for example, if it's your boss and there's no way that you're going to win, you might decide, okay, this is an instance where it makes sense for me to back off. Or you could just make some sort of non-committal statement like, okay, well, thanks, I appreciate your opinion and I'll take that under advisement. And so you're not saying you're going to do one thing, but you're also not saying that you're going to back up. And that can be a way to kind of move the conversation forward. And maybe, you'll lick off your wounds. I'm kind of joking as I say that, or prepare to maybe plant another seed in the future. Because the thing is that all disagreements don't necessarily get hashed out in one conversation. Sometimes it's the sort of thing where you plant seeds across time so that you can influence someone else. And then eventually, hopefully, you'll get to influence them to your way of thinking. And if not, then you can agree to disagree, but still come up with a mutually agreeable solution. The last suggestion I have is to speak with confidence. So if you're deciding to be assertive, right? You've decided that you're going to take some interpersonal risks and speak up a little bit more. So for instance, if you're someone who never speaks up in a meeting, you might have a goal that I'm going to say one thing during this meeting, and then maybe that increases to 2. Or you might decide, when I have an idea, I'm going to voice it instead of questioning it and just keeping it to myself. So you're setting those goals for yourself. But then when you speak up, I want you to speak with confidence, right? I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where somebody speaks up and they're using all sorts of qualifying statements like, well, maybe we could do it this way, or I think this would be okay, or maybe we could do a little bit of this, and they're basically watering down their message and they're not coming across with confidence. So instead, think about taking up space, right? Keep your back straight. Embody a confident person. And then as you speak with confidence. Again, I'm not talking about being a jerk or being aggressive, but what I am saying is stand behind what you're saying. Speak as if you believe it. Speak as if you want to influence. And in those instances, you're much more likely to influence someone than if you're being all meek and shy and tentative. Your message is going to get lost based on the way that you're delivering it. Across time, as you practice these behaviors and put these strategies into place, they will become almost second nature. So even if they feel a little bit awkward at first, know that as you continue to get practice, you'll get more and more comfortable being assertive. And I can say that myself, as someone who never used to speak up, I'm now often in meetings the first person to give my opinion. And not aggressive, but I am assertive in letting my voice be heard, and it feels really good and it feels really empowering. So anyway, I hope that you got some helpful nuggets from this video. As I mentioned, you can visit me on my website at silverliningpsychology.com. Make sure to like and subscribe. Follow me here on Facebook so that you can become aware of other videos when I post them. And if you want to learn more from me in general about how to be a better leader and more effective in the workplace, then I really encourage you to check out my online courses. They've been taken at this point by over, I think, like 22,000 students or more. So I've had an influence on a lot of people, and I hope that you will be one of them. So leave me your favorite assertiveness tips in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.